Peace and power to everyone. Welcome to my new subscribers. Welcome back to my YouTube family. I'm working. Give me one moment. All right, y'all. Peace and power to everyone. I hope you enjoyed. It's 11:11 a.m. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. We're going to get back into the view of the Hebrews, page 112. The Indian Feast of Harvest and annual expiation of sin is described by these writers and in a way which enforces the conviction that they derive them from ancient Israel. Details are given in the Star in the West. My limits will permit only to hint at them. The detailed accounts are worth perusing. Yeah, I mean, as soon as I decide I'm gonna go ahead and read, that's when the phone start ringing. One moment. Okay, y'all, it's a whole hour later. An Indian daily sacrifice is described. They throw a small piece of the fattest of their meat into the fire before they eat. They draw their newly killed venison through the fire. The blood they often burn. It is with them a horrid abomination to eat the blood of their game. A particular or two of their feasts shall be noted. Dr. Beatty gives an account of what he saw among the Indians northwest of Ohio. He said before they make use of any of the first fruits of the ground, 12 of their old men meet when a deer and some of the first fruits are provided. The deer is divided into 12 parts and the corn beaten in a mortar and prepared for use by boiling or baking under the ashes, and of course unleavened. This is also divided into 12 parts. Then these 12 men hold up the venison and fruits and pray with their faces to the east, acknowledging, as is supposed, the bounty of God to them. It is then eaten. After this, they freely enjoy the fruits of the earth on the feast, which looks like the Passover. A great quantity of venison is provided with other things dressed in their usual way and distributed to all the guests, of which they eat freely that evening. But that which is left is thrown into the fire and burned as none of it. Page 113, chapter 3. None of it must remain till the sunrise the next day, nor must a bone of the venison be broken. Mr. Boudinot says it is fresh in the memory of the old traders among the Indians, as was assured by those who have lived among them, that formerly none of the numerous nations of Indians would eat or even handle any part of the new harvest until some of it had been offered up at the yearly festival by the beloved man high priest or those of his appointment at the plantation, even though the light harvest of the past should almost have forced. One moment. Every time I start reading, y'all, force them to give their women and children of the ripening fruits to sustain life. Who that reads the law of Moses can doubt the origin of these Indian traditions. The Hebrews were commanded to eat their Passover with bitter herbs, Exodus 12 and 8. The Indians have a notable custom of purifying themselves with bitter herbs and roots. Describing one of their feasts, the writer says, at the end of the notable dance, the old beloved women return home to hasten the feast. In the meantime, everyone at the temple drinks plentifully at the casina and other bitter liquids to cleanse their sinful bodies as they suppose. Casina and other bitter liquids to cleanse their sinful bodies as they suppose. The Indians have their traditionary notion clearly alluding to the death of Abel by the murderous hand of Cain, as well as one alluding to the longevity of the ancients. More full accounts are given by some of these authors of the Archimagus of the Indians, their high priest. As the high priest in Israel was inducted into office by various ceremonies and by anointing, so is the Indian high priest by purification and by anointing, which the holy garments are put upon him. Bear's oil is poured on his head, and it is stated that the high priests have their resemblances of the various ornaments worn by the ancient high priest, and even a resemblance of the breastplate. The white people, ignorant of Indian custom, jugglers, but they are now ascertained by good witness as a manifest corrupt succession of the high priesthood in ancient Israel. Bartrand says those with inferior priests and prophets have been maintained in most, if not all, the tribes. The Indian high priest makes his yearly atonement for sin. He appears at their temple, such as it is, arrayed in his white deerskin garments, seeming to answer to the ancient ephod. Entering on his duty, the waiter spreads a white seat with a white dress buckskin close by the holiest apartment of their temple, and puts on his white beads offered by the people. A variety of curious things are described in this dress by Mr. Adair as pretty evidently designed imitations of the parts of ancient pontifical dress, which it would exceed my limits to describe. This dress is left in the holy place of their temple till the high priest comes to officiate again. Now his breastplate is made of a white conch shell, through which two straps of otter skin pass into perforations. Whole white buttons on the buck's horn are superadded as though in imitation of the precious stones on the ancient breastplate. A swan skin wreath adorns his head instead of ancient plate of gold, and for the ancient tiara, the Archimagus has his tuft of white feathers. His holy fire he obtains by rubbing two sticks together, and his golden bells and pomegranates are formed of the dried spurs of wild turkeys, strung so as to rattle on his fine moccasins. Okay, so they even use pomegranates for rattles. That's how we got the shape of maracas. Page 115, chapter 3, Mr. Adair assures us when the Indian Archimagus high priest is addressing his people and enforcing the divine speech that he calls them the beloved and holy people. According to the language concerning ancient Israel, he urges them to imitate their virtuous ancestors and flourishes upon their beloved land, flowing with milk and honey. Mr. Adair describes the Indian feast and speaks of them as bearing a very near resemblance of the stated feast in ancient Israel. He gives account that when the Indians are about to engage in war, they have their preparatory sacrifices, purifications, and fastings. He speaks of their daily sacrifice, their ablutions, marriages, divorces, burials, mourning for the dead, separations of women, and punishment of various crimes as being, in his opinion, manifestly of Hebrew origin. Their reckonings of time, Mr. Adair viewed as evidently Hebrew, they begin their year, as did Israel, at the first appearance of a new moon after the vernal equinox. Y'all look that up. Keep talking about the Sabbath being on Saturday. It is not consecutive Saturdays. It's not every Saturday. We're to use our luminaries to judge the time. So it's not every Saturday. We did the etymology of the Sabbath, the word. We know that our invaders have come in and tried to understand what we were doing, and then they set their own thing. Saturday, the name itself is one of their gods, and then Sabbath is something we were doing. And I'm not saying we don't have a Sabbath, but I'm saying it's not every Saturday. Okay, I'm not gonna break down a video and show what I know, because what I'm learning about this information is that it changes. When you're learning, it's ever changing. What I do know as of now, it's not every Saturday. And I have the documents that were shared with me. The person who created these documents deleted the vlog site where she had the information, which is Miss Tanya Moore. And my sister forwarded it to me because she had the smarts to download some of the information that was on that vlog, VLOG. Well, it wasn't a video thing, so I guess blog. It was Blogspot. But anyway, it's not every Saturday. You don't have to believe me. It's something that I do not care to argue about. I'm just trying to help y'all be in the know, and you have to go out there and look for the information yourself. Anyway, okay. Their reckonings of time, Mr. They're viewed as evidently Hebrew. They begin their year as did Israel at the first appearance of a new moon after the vernal equinox. Somebody look that up. They reckon by the 4 seasons and by the subdivisions of the moon. Y'all hear that? All three. They reckon by the 4 seasons and by the subdivisions of the moon. All right. Bartram says the Indians believe their high priests have intimate communion with the world of spirits, and that no great design is formed by the Indians without his counsel. At the Assinipolis or Poles, far to the west, we learn in Captain Carver's travel among the Western Indians have their high priest who pretends to great intimacy with the Great Spirit and to be able to foretell future events, as is the case with Killingstinos at the Grand Portage. Certain things he thus found among different Indians. Page 116, chapter 3. Which show them to have been the same origin. Now, within about 80 years, men inform that these rights of the high priest have been more neglected. The Indians informed that in 1747, the high priest in the Natchez, my friends from Natchez, they are among, well, he is from this tribe. The high priest in the Natchez was struck dead by lightning while using his invocation for rain. They supposed the Great Spirit to have been angry with him for some impurity, and with the darting fire and threatening voice took him away and forbid them to renew the like attempt. Bartram gives a description of southern Indian people, and Natchez is in Mississippi. A description of southern Indian people. It is a square of small buildings in the center of their Indian town. The small buildings of one story covers perhaps half an acre, more or less, according to the strength of the tribe. In one of these buildings, they hold their councils. A part of this building is shut up as a holy of holies, and it is death for any but the high priest to enter it. Here they deposit their most sacred things, as the psychic pot, rattles, chaplets, eagle's tail, and pipe of peace. And somebody look up, sometimes when these people go on expedition, these people mean our invaders, they go into these places, they found treasure, and they all end up dead. Somebody look that up and do a video. Now, to this temple, the males is ancient Israel are obliged to assemble 3 times a year, viz. At the feast of the first ripe fruits, at the feast for the success of hunting, about the time of the ancient Pentecost, and the great feast for the expiation of sins, about the tune of ripe corn. No account could be given of these things without a complicated miracle unless the Indians have descended from the tribes of Israel. Mr. Boudinot informs that when any of their beloved people die, they soften the thought of death by saying he is going to sleep with his beloved fathers. The ancient pious Hebrews dying. Page 117. I'm sorry, y'all. Sorry, y'all. I'm coming. Yeah, I know. It's technology. My phone is going, and I have no idea why. So I'm just clearing it out. Okay. Um, Fell asleep and was gathered to his people. The Indian, when one dies, wash and anoint the body. The Hebrews did the same. Some of the southern Indians hired mourners to bewail and magnify the merits of the dead. Thus did the Hebrews, Jeremiah 9:17, and the Indians, as did the Hebrews, have their solemn songs on such occasion. A religious procession moves around the corpse, singing Yah, Jah. Ho is then sung by the procession. The leader then says he, all follow, then Wah is sung by all. Thus they sing the syllables which compose Jah, Jehovah. The corpse is then buried with the face to the east. And they keep saying they are singing in syllables, which we know in our language. If it was broken down like that, it means something totally different. One of y'all look that up. Not gonna be me, okay? I'm sorry, y'all. I'm opening seaweed. Okay. The corpses is then buried with their face to the east. One moment. Okay, Lewis and Clark in their tour to the Pacific informed that they found among the natives in those remote regions receptacles for the dead, always lying east and west, the door of the tomb to the east, and the bodies in the tomb lying with the face to the east. The Indians often bury with the corpse a variety of furniture and their best things, if the dead be a first character. One moment. Lewis and Clark, in their tours to the Pacific, informed that they found among the natives in those two remote regions receptacles for the dead, always lying east and west, the door of the tomb to the east, and the bodies in the tomb lying with the face to the east. The Indians always bury with the corpse a variety of furniture and the best things, if the dead be a first character. The Hebrews did the same. Josephus informs that Hyrcanus, a Maccabee, when Jerusalem was besieged by the Syrian tyrant and money was wanted, took from King David's sculpture 3,000 talents, which had 1,300 years before been buried with him. So they raided his deathbed, literally. Another noted Hebrew custom that Indians have, Dr. Boudinot informs that a worthy minister informed him that as he was preaching with some Indians between the exercises, tidings were brought to an Indian woman present that her son was suddenly drowned. In deep distress, she retired to a little distance and sat on the ground. Female friends followed and, page 118, chapter 3, sat around her. After sitting a season in solemn silence, the mourning mother put her hand upon her mouth and fell forward with her face in the dust. The rest followed the example. The men went by themselves and did the same. It is well known that laying the hand on the mouth and the mouth in the dust is a distinguished Hebraism. See Micah 7:16, Lamentations 3:29, and Proverbs 30:32. Thus the reader is presented with a view of the historical and religious traditions of the Native Americans and will judge for himself whether they do not exhibit satisfactory evidence that these nations are the very tribes of Israel. So important an argument is furnished on the subject from the Indian's place of refuge from the avenger of blood, that a particular head shall be reserved for it. In a succeeding page, among what other people on the earth can such traditional evidence be found of their being the descendants of the 10 tribes? It is believed no other nations exhibit such evidence. Whence came the natives of one continent, if they be not the tribes of Israel? And where are those tribes to be found? They are to be found and come to light as Israelites in this too. About the present period, the results from the prophetic scriptures and the signs of the time, the descendants of Abraham are now soon to be recovered. When shall this branch of them be found as having been providentially preserved now for 2,500 years, if not in this sequestered land? The tribes of Israel might have found their way hither as well as any other people. Some people did find their way hither and have brought down all those Hebraisms and traditions, which it seems could not be furnished from any other quarter than from the Commonwealth of Israel, page 119, chapter 3. The celebrated William Penn gives accounts of the natives of Pennsylvania. Which go to corroborate the same point. Mr. Penn saw the Indians of Pennsylvania before they had been affected with the rude treatment of the white people. And in a letter to a friend in England, he thus writes of those natives: I found them with like countenances with the Hebrew race, and their children of so lively a resemblance to them, that a man would think himself in Duke's Place or Berry Street in London when he sees them. Here, without the least previous idea of these natives being Israelites, that shrewd man was struck with their being Israelites. That shrewd man was struck with their perfect resemblance of them, and with other things which will be noted. He speaks of their dress and trinkets as notable, like those of ancient Israel. Their earrings, nose jewels, bracelets on their arms and legs, rings such as they were on their fingers, necklaces made of polished shells found in their rivers and on their coast, bands, shells, and feathers ornamenting the heads of females, and various strings of beads adorning several parts of the body. So we today still practice these habits, honey. It just makes me feel good. We love bracelets and jewelry, piercings. This is a part of our culture. Now, Mr. Penn adds to his friend that they considered this people as under a dark night, yet they believe in God and immortality without the help of metaphysics. For he says they informed him that there was a great king who made them, that the souls of the good shall go to him. He adds their worship consists in 2 parts: sacrifice and canticle songs. The first is with their first fruits and the first buck. This is quoted by Bitchnut on page 120. They kill goes to the fire. Mr. Penn proceeds to describe their splendid feast of their first ripe fruit, one of which he attended. He informs all that go to this feast must take a piece of money, which is made of bone and fish, not metal coins or paper. None shall appear before me empty. One moment. He speaks of the agreement of their rights with those of Hebrews. He adds, they reckon by moons. They offer their first ripe fruits. They have a kind of feast of tabernacles. They are said to lay their altars with 12 stones. They mourn a year. They have their separations of women, with many other things that do not now occur. Here is a most artless testimony given by that notable man, drawn from his own observations and accounts given by him, while the thought of this people being actually Hebrew probably was most distant from his mind. Okay, y'all, we're on number 8. All right, y'all. They're having a tribe Answering in various respects to the tribe of Levi sheds further light on this subject. The thought naturally occurs that if these are the 10 tribes and they have preserved so many of their religious traditions, should we not be likely to find among them some tradition of a tribe answering to the tribe of Levi? If we should find something of this, the evidence of their being the tribes of Israel would indeed be more striking. Possibly this is furnished. The Mohawk tribe were held by the other tribes in great reverence, and the other tribes round about them had been accustomed to pay them an annual tribute. Mr. Boudinot gives the following account of them. Mr. Colden says he had been told by old men, Indians in New England, that when their Indians were at war formerly with the Mohawks, as soon as a Mohawk appeared, the Indians would raise a cry, page 121, from hill to hill, a Mohawk, upon which all would flee as sheep before a wolf without attempting to make the least resistance, and that all nations around them have for many years entirely submitted to their advice and paid them a yearly tribute, and the tributary nations dared not to make war or peace without the consent of the Mohawks. Mr. Colden goes on to state an instance of their speech to the governor in Virginia, in which it appears the Mohawks were the correctors of the misdoings of the other tribes. Now could anything be found in their name which might have an allusion to the superiority of the tribe of Levi, we should think the evidence very considerable that here are indeed the descendants of the part of the tribe which clave to the house of Israel. And here too evidence seems not wholly wanting. The Hebrew word Makohek signifies an interpreter of the law superior. We have then a new view of the possible origin of the Mohawks. Now, several prophetic traits of character given to the Hebrews do accurately apply to the Aborigines of America. Intemperance may be first noted. Isaiah, writing about the time of the expulsion of Israel from Canaan and about to predict their restoration, says Isaiah 28:1, woe to the crown of pride, the drunkards of Ephraim. Ephraim was a noted name of the 10 tribes of Israel. The crown of pride, the drunkards of Ephraim, shall be trodden under feet, for all tables shall be full of vomit and filthiness, so that there is no place to clean. That there is no place clean. Sorry. I'm trying to read fast, it ain't working. And the course of the descriptions of their drunkenness, that of their rejection and restoration, is blended, that the Lord by a mighty one would cast them down to the earth, page 122, chapter 3, and their glorious beauty should be like that of a rich flower in a fertile valley, which droops, withers, and dies, but in time God will revive it. In that day shall the Lord of hosts be for a crown of glory, and for a diadem of beauty unto the residue of this people. None who know the character of the Indians in relation to intemperance need to be informed that this picture does most singularly apply to them. Dr. Williams, in his History of Vermont on this trait of Indian character, says, no sooner had the Indians tasted of the spirituous liquors brought by Europeans than they contracted a new appetite which they were wholly unable to govern. The old and the young, the Sakyam, the warrior, and the women, whenever they can obtain liquors, indulge themselves without moderation and without decency, till universal drunkenness takes place. All the tribes appear to be under the dominion of this appetite and unable to govern it. So they gave us alcohol, and we did not reject it. And now, to this day, we are heavy drinkers, all of us. And I know it's a handful of people, I don't drink. Okay, that's you. Us as a whole, we're heavy drinkers. A writer in the Connecticut magazine assures us of the Indians in Massachusetts when our fathers first arrived there. As soon as they had a taste of ardent spirits, they discovered a strong appetite for them, and their thirst soon became insatiable. So sad. Another trait of Hebrew character which singularly applies to the Indians is found in Isaiah 3. The bravery of their tinkling ornaments about their feet, their caws, and round tires like the moon, their chains, bracelets, mufflers, bonnets, ornaments of the legs, headbands, tablets, earrings, rings, nose jewels, the mantles, the wimples, and the crisping pins. One would imagine the prophet was here indeed describing the natives of America in their full dress. No other people on the earth probably bear resemblance to such a degree. Page 123, chapter 3. This description was given just before the expulsion of Israel, and nothing would be more likely than that their taste for these flashy ornaments should descend to posterity, for these make the earliest and deepest impressions on the rising generation, and many of the Indians exhibit the horrid contrast which there follows. Okay, the Indians, being in tribes with their heads and names of tribes, affords further light upon this subject. The Hebrews not only had their tribes and heads of tribes as have the Indians, but they had their annual emblems of their tribes. Dan's emblem was a serpent, Issachar's an ass, Benjamin a wolf, and Judas a lion. And this trait of character is not wanting among the natives of this land. They have their wolf tribe, their tiger tribe, their panther tribe, the buffalo tribe, the bear tribe, the deer tribe, the raccoon tribe, the eagle tribe, and many others. What other nation on earth bears any resemblance to this? Here, no doubt, is Hebrew tradition. Various of the emblems given in Jacob's last blessing have been strikingly fulfilled in the American Indian. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path that biteth the horse's heels, so that the rider shall fall backwards. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. Had the prophetic eye rested on the American Aborigines, it seems as though no picture could have been more accurate. Number 11. They're having an imitation of the ancient city of refuge evinces the truth of our subject. The city of refuge has been hinted from Mr. Adair, but as this is no convincing an argument, no nation here on earth having... I'm sorry, y'all. Did I press record? Anyway, let's just see. No. Number 11. They're having an imitation of the ancient city of refuge evidences the truth of our subject. The city of refuge has been hinted from Mr. Adair, but as this is so convincing an argument, no nation on earth having anything of the kind, page 124, chapter 3, but the ancient Hebrews and the Indians. The reader shall be more particularly instructed on this article of one of these places of refuge. Mr. Boudinot says the town of refuge called Coati is on a large stream of the Mississippi, 5 miles above where Fort Loudon formerly stood. Here some years ago, a brave Englishman was protected after killing an Indian warrior in defense of his property. And they had no property. This was us taking up for them, killing our own brothers and sisters. He told Mr. Adair that after some months' stay in this place of refuge, he intended to return to his house in the neighborhood, but the chiefs told him it would prove fatal to him, so that he was obliged to continue there till he pacified the friends of the deceased by presents to their satisfaction. In the upper country of Muskogee, and I think my grandmother was talking about Muskogee. I think that's Alabama. Anyway, says Dr. Bernard, was an old beloved town called Coosa, which is a place of safety for those who kill undesignedly. In almost every Indian nation, he adds, there are several peaceful towns, which are called old beloved, holy, or white towns. It is not within the memory of the oldest people that blood was ever shed in them, although they often forced persons from them and put them elsewhere to death. Who can read this and not be satisfied of the origin of this Indian tradition? The well-known trait of Indian character that they will pursue one who has killed any of their friends ever so far and ever so long as an avenger of the bloodshed, thus lies clearly open to view. It originated in the permission given to the avenger of blood in the commonwealth of Israel and is found in such a degree probably in no other nation. And now people kill our family and friends and we turn the other cheek and we march, and that's about it. Peace and power to everyone. I'm done. Enjoy your day.